Okay, so shoes. Let's talk about shoes for a sec. Or shirts. Or even, those leather car seats.
Right?
Ever think about the people who make sure those materials are, cut perfectly?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we're diving into today, that whole world of cutting machine operators.
And it's a world with more to it than you might think. It's not just pressing a button or something.
Right. It's got to be more than that.
It takes real precision. You got to solve problems on the fly. There's even a bit of artistry to it, I'd
I
say.
bet. I was actually looking through, remember that RoleCatcher guide you sent over?
Yeah.
It mentions that they work with, get this, everything. Leather, textiles, even dyes. I
Oh,
mean, I knew someone was cutting that stuff, but I never really pictured what the job, like, actually looks like.
it's easy to not think about it, but cutting machine operators, they're the unsung heroes behind so many industries. And you're right, the range of materials they deal with is crazy. We're talking about everything from the leather in your car's interior to like the composite materials used in airplanes.
So we're talking about a job with hidden variety, which is cool. But this RoleCatcher guide I keep mentioning, it also mentions quality control a lot.
Hmm.
What does that even look like, practically speaking? It's got to be more than just making sure the machine doesn't broke, right?
Oh, way more. Like, imagine you're working with a roll of leather for those car seats we were just talking about.
Okay, yeah.
A cutting machine operator isn't just like feeding it into the machine. They're examining the hide, looking for imperfections, even deciding the absolute best way to cut it to make the best quality product with the least amount of waste.
Wow. So it's like
They're kind of like material detectives in a way.
material detectives. I like that. So
Yeah.
it's a very detail-oriented job then,
Yeah.
right? This guide mentions operation and control and operations monitoring as being a huge part of the role, like a huge percentage,
Yeah.
like 54%.
Exactly, exactly. Think about it. One small imperfection in a cut can ruin an entire piece of material,
Oh, yeah.
which means wasted resources, lost profits for the company. So these operators, they need to have a really good eye. They need to understand how different materials behave, how to think critically and make decisions on the fly.
Okay, so not a job for someone who gets bored easily. The RoleCatcher guide breaks down all the core tasks,
Hmm.
and it mentions programming cuts, which honestly sounds kind of high tech to me. Like, what does that involve actually?
That's where it gets really interesting, actually. So depending on the machine, operators use computer software to basically like teach it how to make specific cuts. Imagine inputting a super complex design for, I don't know, a shoe upper, or programming the machine to cut multiple layers of fabric perfectly.
Wow.
That's all done through programming.
So you're not just operating a machine, you're practically like engineering with it.
Yeah,
It makes sense though with all the crazy designs and wild materials they use for stuff these days.
absolutely.
So you need like good hands-on skill, but also you got to be tech savvy.
You got it. And that's what makes this line of work so interesting. It's that intersection of traditional craftsmanship meeting cutting edge technology.
Okay, I'm into it. So let's say someone's listening and they're intrigued, maybe even a little intimidated by all the tech stuff we've been talking about,
Right.
but they're up for the challenge.
Right.
What does the like typical career path even look like for this kind of thing? Does everyone start in some dusty factory basement and hope they get to the good stuff one day?
Well, not exactly, though the guide does mention the work environment can be a little noisy and dusty at times.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But seriously, they've outlined three main stages: entry level, junior, senior. Each one has its own responsibilities, and you're always learning.
Okay, so let's break those stages down a bit, for the folks at home.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone who's just starting out, total newbie, what can they expect in those early days? Like, what kind of tasks are they doing? What are their responsibilities?
Yeah, so when you're first starting out, you're really learning the ropes, literally.
Right?
You'll probably be assisting the more experienced operators, getting familiar with all the different machines,
Okay.
maybe practicing your cuts on scrap material so you don't mess up the good stuff.
Makes sense.
It's all about building those foundational skills and getting comfortable with how fast-paced and precise you need to be in this job.
So like an apprenticeship, you're paying your dues and learning from the best of the best.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about when you move up to that junior cutting machine operator role? Is that when you get to touch the fancy software?
Yeah, that's right. As a junior operator, you're going to have way more autonomy. You'll be checking materials yourself, setting up and operating the machines on your own. You might even get to do some basic programming on the simpler cuts. It's all about like taking those skills you learn, getting better and better, learning how to troubleshoot when things go wrong, and basically proving you can be trusted to work with valuable materials and expensive equipment.
So it's like leveling up in a video game. You have more responsibility, more challenges, but I bet there's a bigger sense of accomplishment too, right?
Absolutely.
But what about when you get to that, that coveted senior level? What does that look like in this field? So you've put in the time, you've mastered the machines, you can program these things in your sleep probably.
Yeah.
What does that senior level life look like? What's in store for you?
Well, you're definitely the expert at that point. You're not just, overseeing whole projects and making sure that everything is running smoothly and the quality is high.
Right, right,
You're also probably mentoring those junior operators that we were talking about.
right.
You're training new hires, bringing them up to speed.
So you're like that expert, you're the cutting machine whisperer
Yeah,
passing down the wisdom.
exactly. And you're the one they call when something really complex comes up.
Right.
Like something's just not working and nobody knows, you're the one that they go to.
You're the problem solver.
Right. You're more likely to be working with, you know, the design team or the engineering team.
So you're not just in your own little world just doing your own thing.
No, no, no. You're a part of the team, a very important part.
That's cool. It's like a real team effort.
Yeah.
This guide even has, like, remember in the career stages section, they have those example profile snippets.
Yes.
It makes it all feel real, like, oh, this is an actual person.
Yeah, they're great. They give you a real sense of what it's actually like day to day.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of getting real, this RoleCatcher guide, they have like whole sections on interview tips, FAQs. It's like they knew every question we were going to ask.
I know. It's great, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like they really thought about everything.
They did. Okay. But before we get too far, because we do want to dive into that interview prep stuff,
Right.
because that's super helpful. But there's one more thing I'm curious about. And the guide keeps hinting at this, so we got to talk about it. Automation. How is that changing the game? Is that good news or bad news for people who want to do this job? Are robots coming for everybody?
Yeah, that is the big question, isn't it, these days? It's a little bit of both, honestly.
Right.
The guide does mention that companies are using more and more sophisticated machines and software.
Right.
Things like the automated cutting tables, advanced 3D modeling programs, stuff like that.
Yeah. Which, okay, that's cool. That's really cool for like efficiency
Right.
and precision. But also, I can see someone being a little nervous. Like, is that going to take my job?
Of course. Yeah, and it's a totally legitimate concern. But here's the thing. While some of the more repetitive tasks, the entry-level stuff, yeah, those might get automated. What it's actually doing is it's increasing the demand for the highly skilled operators, the ones who can program the machines, manage the systems, troubleshoot when something goes wrong.
So it's not about being replaced. It's about learning how to work with the robots.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like the difference between driving a horse and buggy and then piloting a spaceship.
Right. Right.
The fundamental skills are still there. You still need to know how to, control the vehicle, but the technology is just, it's a whole different level.
Right. You got to level up. Okay, I like that. So that makes it even more interesting in a way. And the guide does say, that the job outlook is good, right? Like there are going to be jobs.
Yeah, yeah. They said a 2% projected job growth from 2019 to 2029.
Which, okay, not huge growth,
Yeah.
but it's not like it's going away.
Exactly. The jobs are still there, but the work is changing, and that's why, you can't just learn it once and then that's it. It's changing all the time.
You got to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
We've talked about the programming, the troubleshooting, the automation, but like what are some other skills that people should be thinking about if they want to do this kind of work in the future?
Well, one thing that's really exploding right now is sustainable materials and all these innovative fabrics.
Yeah.
Things like plant-based leathers, they're making them out of pineapple fibers and mushroom roots.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on. Mushroom roots.
I know, right? I had no idea.
Recycled plastics, woven into these high-performance athletic wear, things like that.
So we're talking about mushrooms in my shoes. That's the future. Yeah. And it's a great example of how this field is just constantly changing, and these new materials, they behave differently
Yeah.
than traditional materials. So you got to be able to adapt. You got to be willing to experiment with different cutting techniques, different settings,
Yeah, because like leather, that's one thing. But if I've got like mushroom leather,
Right.
or like recycled ocean plastic, that's got to be a whole different ballgame.
Totally different. And that's why people who are curious, who like to solve problems, who are excited about, what's new, what's next, those are the people that are going to do really well in this.
This is blowing my mind. Like, we're not just talking about like cutting fabric anymore.
I know.
We're talking about material science.
I know.
the future of, like, fashion.
It's very cool.
Yeah. But I do want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about automation, right? Because we talked about how the
Yeah.
jobs are changing. So if you're just starting out, should you be like looking for those companies that already have all the fancy robots and stuff? Or is there value in like starting with those old school machines?
That's a really good question, and it really just depends on what you want and how you learn best.
So if you're someone who's like, I just want to get my hands dirty and figure it out, maybe starting with the old stuff isn't bad.
Right, yeah.
But if you're like all about the new tech, give me all the robots,
Yeah.
then find those companies that are already on that.
Right, exactly. And I mean, even those companies that haven't switched over to the really high-tech stuff yet,
Yeah.
a lot of them are looking for people who can learn it, as they upgrade. So
Yeah. Makes sense.
having some basic computer skills and being okay with learning new tech is going to be huge.
Yeah, so it's like those old school skills, that eye for detail, the material knowledge,
Right.
that becomes even more important with all this automation because you're not just like they're pushing a button. You need to actually understand what's happening.
Right, exactly. You have to be the one to make sure the robots are doing it right.
Exactly.
It's that human element that's always going to be important, no matter how fancy the machines get. I mean, you could even say that automation is actually making this job even more important, even more specialized.
I like that. It's not about being replaced. It's about, okay, how does my job change with the times?
Exactly, exactly.
I like it. It's funny. When we first started talking about all this, I had a very like, okay, cutting machine operator, got it, But this is a whole thing. There's so much to it.
It really is, and it's constantly changing, too.
And that's what I love about these deep dives is we get to like peel back the layers
I know,
on
right?
jobs that people don't think twice about.
It's amazing how much skill and ingenuity goes into the things we just like expect to be there.
I know. Okay, speaking of, we talked a lot about the technical skills,
Yeah.
but this RoleCatcher guide, they also talk about, the teamwork aspect, communication, problem solving, all that good stuff.
Mm.
So how does that all play into a job like this? It's not like they're up there giving PowerPoints all day, are they?
You'd be surprised. Remember, they're working with designers, the engineers, the production managers. They're the ones actually making the thing, so.
Right. Being able to talk about what's possible with the materials,
Yeah.
any challenges, just being able to brainstorm together. That's huge. So you need to be able to explain, like, okay, here's what I can do with this mushroom leather.
Right,
To
exactly.
someone who's never even seen a mushroom.
Yes, exactly. You've got to make it make sense for everyone.
That's a good skill to have in general.
Absolutely. And don't forget about problem solving. I mean, materials can be unpredictable.
Oh, yeah.
Machines can break. Deadlines.
Always
As
deadlines.
a good cutting machine operator can stay calm, figure it out, and not be afraid to ask for help when they need it.
Yeah, they're like the calm in the middle of the storm.
Exactly.
Oh, I love it. Well, this has been honestly so cool. We've gone from like, I'm picturing shoes to car seats to pineapple leather to robots.
I know. It's been an adventure. It has. This field, it really is always changing, and it's so interesting to see.
It is. Okay, but before we let everybody go,
Yeah.
I always like to leave our listeners with like a little something to think about.
Okay.
What's your big prediction for this whole world of cutting machine operating? Something that people should be thinking about if this is maybe like, oh, maybe this is the job for me.
That's a good question. Well, we talk a lot about automation, right? And the different materials. But I think one of the biggest things is going to be data.
Oh, data analysis.
Data analysis. That's going to be huge in this field.
See, that's something I did not see coming. Oh, explain it to me because, okay, data, I get it. You're programming the machines.
Right.
But like, what else?
Okay, but imagine like being able to analyze like the wear patterns on a cutting blade.
Yeah.
Like microscopically. You could know exactly when it needs to be replaced. You're not wasting any time. You're not,
Wow.
Or think about using data to actually make the cutting process better.
Right.
You analyze the material, the speed, the blade pressure, all of that, and you just use that data to reduce waste and just get a better product.
So you're like a cutting machine whisperer
Yeah,
and a data detective.
exactly. The future isn't just about running the machines. It's about understanding what they're telling you.
Wow. I love it. This has been so cool. We went from, like I said, from shoes to data-driven manufacturing.
I know, right? Who knew there was so much to learn?
Not me. But that's why we do this show. A huge thank you to you for like being our guide through this whole world.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It's so fascinating.
And to all of you listening, thanks for going on this journey with us. Until next time, stay curious. Maybe we'll see you in the world of, I don't know, mushroom-based footwear.
That's right. You never know where your curiosity will take you.
That is the truth.